The hardest hit demographics for people getting laid off were white men between 50 and 54.
Again, I'm here interviewing the owner of not one but two North Carolina Wolfgang Bakery locations, one in Wendell and one in Wilmington. This is Kurt. We're here to talk about you and your journey to becoming a business owner and what brought you to the person that you are today and what those next phases look like. So you want to talk a little bit about yourself and kind of where you get started in your original business ventures that led to being the owner of Wolfgang Bakery.
Sure. I guess I'm not the traditional small business owner in the sense that I'm very much a late blooming entrepreneur. I never even thought about working outside of the traditional corporate America structure until I was 44 years old.
Wow.
And so I didn't start any side business until I was 45. The catalyst for me was Great Recession of 2008. I was working for a software company and I was supporting the retail customers, the retail vertical. And one week after another, retail companies that we were doing business with were either declaring bankruptcy or stopping the project that they were doing or telling us that they just couldn't pay their bills, right? It was a really, really tough period for a lot of people. And I was in Chicago on business, staying in a hotel, went down to the breakfast bar, and they give you the USA Today newspaper when you're eating breakfast. And so I opened up the headline on the top right corner was hardest hit demographics in the Great Recession. So that caught my eye. So I went and read the article. And the hardest hit demographics for people getting laid off were white men between 50 and 54.
Oh, dang.
And I was 44 at the time.
Yeah.
And so I started doing the math. I'm like, business cycles typically are 5 to 7 years. So we're going to come out of this. We'll have a period of growth and then we're going to be in another bust. And I'm going to be right there in that demographic.
Right.
At the same time, I have potentially 3 kids in college at the same time. And it scared the bejesus out of me.
Yeah.
So almost immediately I started looking at other ways of making money. And I was lucky in that one of my peers at the software company I was working with had already invested in real estate. I was living in Pittsburgh at the time and he was in Pittsburgh. And so he mentored me, he took me under his wing, he drove me around and, helped me look at properties, taught me, what he looks for. And that's what started it. I bought my first 3-bedroom, 1-bath house there in 2009. It was $39,000. And when I went to the closing and I was signing all the paperwork, my hands were shaking. I was so nervous. Yeah. Right. I look back on it and, I chuckled, like $39,000 doesn't even buy you a car anymore. Right. And so I bought it. I spent about $2,000 replacing the carpet and doing some touch up. Held an open house and rented it that day.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't that hard.
So you bought this house as an investment property outside of your normal home? Were you already living in a home that you owned at that point?
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get the excess funds for the down payment, or did you do a loan that didn't require a down payment?
It was a $39,000 loan, right. So I only needed $8,000 at closing. Yeah. And I just used, used my regular income.
Your regular income, your savings?
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
That gave me some confidence. That gave me a little boost.
When you did the carpet, did you rip it all out yourself? And you're like, I'm gonna make this cost the least amount possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would always rip it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
My philosophy back then was, if there's anything that just requires grunt labor, I'll do it myself.
Yeah. That's how I feel. I'm like, why would I pay somebody else to do something I'm capable of doing?
Exactly.
Even if it means I gotta take a little longer or watch another YouTube video.
Exactly.
I can do it. I can save the money. And not pay the other guy.
Demo. Then I started getting more and more comfortable doing things like putting flooring down, laminate flooring and things like that, trim. I love doing trim work. I feel like I if there is such a thing as reincarnation,
Yeah.
if I come back as a finished carpenter.
I hate trim work. I always mess up the angle every time.
I know.
And I'm like,
Me
this
too.
drives me nuts.
Me too. But it was a rental property, right?
Yeah,
So
for
it was
sure.
it was almost like being in a lab. If I screwed it up,
Didn't really matter.
didn't really matter.
Yeah.
And I just loved trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
I could lose 8 hours just trying to figure out how to mesh the pieces together at the corners
Yeah.
and everything.
So what made you go, okay, hey, I might lose my job in 5 years, and I think real estate's the way to go. How'd you get to that thought process?
I guess it was just a couple of conversations with people like me. Someone recommended the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And that book really, kind of shifted my mindset.
Okay.
It was written by Robert Kiyosaki, who's also a Naval Academy grad. I'm a Naval Academy grad. And it was all about building wealth through real estate, through passive income.
So ironically, that's what my goal is to build passive income. I'm doing it through mortgages.
Yep.
Because I started in real estate, but it's so hard being able to just be there at the drop of a hat when somebody's like, I need to see this house, or I want to whatever.
Right.
Whereas like mortgages, I can be there 24/7 without physically being there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I have not read that book, but so many people have told me about that book and that it has been something that was highly inspirational for them.
Yeah.
And so the book's talking about passive income. And is he generating it just strictly through real estate or through different real estate strategies?
It's been a while since I read it, but I think his primary business was investment real estate. Yeah. He talks about things like, the difference between an asset and a liability. Mm-hmm. Just fundamental financial concepts that I think not enough Americans fully understand. Yeah. And so it really gave me confidence. Then I joined a real estate networking group mm-hmm. in Pittsburgh and met with, I would just pick the brains of everybody there at the monthly meetings. Mm-hmm. And that helped me as well. I pulled the trigger. Mm-hmm. It worked so well. Yeah. And, I began to get confident that, this is not that hard. Yeah. And it was pretty awesome, like going to the mailbox, at the first of the month, and there's the rent check, right? Yeah.
So let me ask you, so from that moment you're sitting in that cafe, reading that magazine, realizing I might be out of a job in 4 or 5 years, to buying that $39,000 home. How much time had passed between that point and then?
About 10 months.
10 months. Wow. That says a lot about your drive and determination and saying, like, I'm going to course correct this before it goes somewhere wrong. Sure.
Well, fear can be quite the motivator.
Absolutely.
And, I was thinking a lot then. At that time, my kids were 10, 8, and 6. Mm-hmm. They're all 18 months apart. Mm-hmm. And, wow. I was potentially going to have all 3 of them in college at the same time and just trying to figure out how I was going to cover it. When I rented that first investment property, mm-hmm. The guy that rented it, his name was Lamont. Mm-hmm. He lived there for 9 years.
Wow. Stability for
like
9 years.
Best tenant, the best first tenant I could have ever had, right? Yeah. And when he moved in, I took my kids down to the house and I made them walk in and say, "Thank you for helping with our college fund."
That's awesome. So you buy this house at $39,000, and how much do you rent it for?
I rented it for $925.
What was the mortgage?
The mortgage was like $350.
So you're making $600.
$600 before taxes, yeah.
Okay. And is he paying utilities and maintenance, cutting the grass, all that?
He has to take care of all that. Yeah, things go like if there's a leak in the faucet or something, that's my responsibility to take care of. But
he's taking care of the yard, the water, trash, sewer, electricity. Mm-hmm. Wow. So $600 straight into a savings account? Is that what we did, or
less? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then did we take that $600 and compound it in a special kind of savings, or was it just, let's squirrel this away for safety?
No, not really.
Okay.
I didn't really earmark it for particular types of investments. I was in asset accumulation mode at that point. So within 18 months after I bought that first house, I had 6 of them.
Really?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I had a really good couple years selling, and I took basically all the condition money and I bought properties with.
So how do we go from 1 to 6?
I mean, it was a perfect storm.
Really?
It was a property, and I mean, I didn't pay. I bought them all close to downtown Pittsburgh, and the most I paid for any of them was $45,000.
Really?
Yeah.
So were you just squirreling away your primary day job savings and then the $600 from that first rental and then using those as your down payments for the other 6 homes?
Yeah.
So did you put the minimum of 3.5% down, or did you put more down on those homes to lower the mortgages? Or how did that work?
When you're when it's an investment property, you don't have your mortgage options are much more limited. So every mortgage that I got required 20% down.
20%?
Yeah.
Okay. So you did 20% conventional loans, 30 years.
Mhm.
You squirrel away $600, saving from your day job, raising 3 kids, and go and say, all right, I'm going to expand this. I'm going to get 6 more properties. So how did you go from 1 to managing 6? Are you managing it by yourself, or did you start accruing employees to help you? Or
No, I couldn't afford it.
yeah.
So I was the property manager.
Okay.
I would do. I mean, the most important thing when you're in investment real estate is have a dream team around you, right? Have a go-to handyman, have a go-to plumber, electrician, roofer, etc. And once you build that dream team of reliable, competent contractors, which is a lot harder than it sounds, it's just coordination. It's just management 101.
How do you push yourself into making that dive when you're sitting there starting 10 months prior to the first home saying, I might lose my job in the next 5 to 6 years. And now you're gambling what sounds like probably a good chunk of your savings in purchasing all of these different, pockets and choosing to believe in yourself in a time of possible tragedy for your day job.
Yes, I just felt like I didn't have any other choice.
Yeah.
That,
Okay.
I just did not want to be that guy that relied on a single source of income and lost his job in his 50s. And I'm 60 years old now, but I have several friends in the last 2 or 3 years, roughly my age, who have been in corporate America for 30 plus years. Just like that, they got laid off, right? So now they're in their late 50s. And I don't care what you say, there is ageism out there when it comes to, hiring.
Yeah.
And many of them did not have a backup plan. So I just felt like I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
I just got more and more confident in it with each property that I bought.
What made you select the locations that you did? Was there a lot of thought into that, or was it price point of I need this much and this is how much I have to put down? So
A little bit of
this threshold.
Little bit of both.
Okay.
I felt like if I bought properties that were close to the city, Pittsburgh at the time was like right in the middle of kind of a major renaissance, right? In the 80s, Pittsburgh just went into the toilet. The steel industry basically moved overseas. People were leaving the city, in droves. And, but over, 20, 25 years later, it had gone through a renaissance, right? A lot of tech companies are setting up in Pittsburgh. There's, major banking there, major healthcare facilities, great universities. And so young people were starting to stay as opposed to getting out as soon as they could. And I felt like if I bought something that was, within 10 minutes of the downtown area, I'd have a pretty good shot of always, having demand for renters. And it worked out well. I ran into a lot of young professionals. I ran into a lot of Duquesne University students.
Oh, did you have all dream tenants, or did you have anybody that wrecked anything? Or, tell us about the lulls and the lows.
No.
Any periods of time you couldn't get it rented and you're stressed out?
I will tell you this. Being a landlord will harden your heart.
Yeah.
I grew up in a fairly modest environment, you know, in the Washington, D.C. area. We were not poor, but we were far from rich. And most of my friends came from similar backgrounds. And so I remember them telling me that, you know, they had to wait until their mom got paid in order to go to the grocery store. But it's been a long time since I interacted with people that are literally winging it from day to day.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a difference between hardworking, well-intentioned people that are just having trouble making ends meet.
Yep.
And just the lazy people who live off entitlements.
Yeah.
And I got a combination of both.
Yeah.
During my time as a landlord. And, you know, I think what I learned over time is, you know, I can't be friends with these people, right? I don't have to be a dick.
Yeah.
But I can't be friends with them because they will take advantage of that and play your heartstrings.
Yeah.
And that was hard. That was hard to do. Like I'm a veteran, and I'm passionate about veterans causes. And so I work with this veterans nonprofit in Pittsburgh to help homeless vets get off the street. And I placed about 6 vets. And I own an apartment. I own 2 apartment buildings as well. And I placed about 6 veterans who were homeless in those buildings. But they're not, you know, the challenge with those nonprofits is they give them a lifeline for about 5 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And then they just cut it off. Yeah. Right. And there's not enough resourcing and focus on helping them fully transition into, you know, having a reliable job, paying their rent on time. And so unfortunately, you know, the rate of success was about 50%. And as soon as the nonprofit's funds ran out, they either didn't have a job or, you know, they were spending their money on things they shouldn't be, and they couldn't pay their rent. And that, the first time I had to evict a veteran, really, that I was one of the lowest feelings I've ever had. Yeah. That's unfortunately, that's just the nature of being a landlord. I don't miss it. I sold all my properties when I got divorced in 2021. And I miss the passive income, but I don't miss the day-to-day drama that tenants would like to suck you into.
I grew up where I had a single mom. My dad died when I was 9, and, you know, substance abuse was, again, top priority in our house. And I saw the struggles of trying to do the right thing, trying to go to work, trying to pay the bills, and struggling with mental health and addiction. And then also now I'm going to try to manipulate the system so that I don't have to work, or I don't have to work as much. And so for me, when I grew up in that, I watched that and was like, okay, number one, the first thing I know is I don't want to be that. I don't want to be something better than those circumstances, because this is not the life for me, and this doesn't look like fun.
And that's a hard thing to do, to break the cycle. Kudos to you for doing it.
Thank you. And the second thing is I was like, man, I have this passion for helping people and showing them that no matter what circumstances you're born into, no matter what life throws at you, you can be anything that you want to be. And just because that is your life right now doesn't mean that it has to be your life tomorrow. Absolutely. And so I have a huge passion for helping people like that. And so I can understand, with you having been a military veteran and watching the struggles that people experience being veterans, and then having to come out into the civilian world and figure out how to navigate all of that. And I'm sure mental health is a huge factor. I'm sure addiction plays a factor. I'm sure, you know, even just simply learning to cope with the civilian world and the way that people communicate so differently. And having to be the person who says, I understand and empathize, and also, this is not the standard that has to be set. And so having to make that decision of enough's enough and you have to be evicted. How do you cope with that aspect? Because as a person who shares in the passion of wanting to help people, the hardest thing for me to do is set a boundary. Yeah. And that's what that is setting a very harsh boundary so difficult when you can resonate in so many levels emotionally with that?
Yeah, I think it was hard.
Financial literacy. What does that even mean? Financial literacy.
Just fundamentals of managing your money, right? Not not falling prey to all the easy money that's available out there. Credit card debt being the most common one. Living within your means. Fundamentally, that's really what it is, and trying to give young people the tools to understand that. I started doing budget spreadsheets with my kids when they were like 10, so they could see, what income versus expenses look like, and I just think we do a really poor job of educating our kids on financial basics, and now we have, as a result, we have more student loan and more credit card debt than ever before.
Yeah.
My own children, have struggled with the burden of credit card debt. So, despite all
your teachings of
yeah,
them.
yeah, sometimes you just have to struggle through it in order for the lesson to stick.
But what advice do you give to somebody who's trying to make a budget for the first time, and they're trying to figure out what should they budget for, what are they doing, how much access should they try and ensure they have?
I'd say the first thing that you need to do is you need to get a handle on what you're spending your money on, and we make it way too easy for people to spend money.
Yeah.
Right. Whether it's a one-click purchase on Amazon or just having, a credit card that you can swipe, I think it's important to take a couple of months of inventory on what you're spending, so you can understand what you're doing. The thing that blows me away about some of the people that work here is, they might complain that, they don't have any money, but yet they go and buy a $7 latte twice a day. I can't tell you the last time I walked into a Starbucks.
Right.
I buy an espresso, I have an espresso, and I make it myself.
Me too.
I just don't think, I think the average person has no idea how much they spend on, those transactions that just accumulate and add up over time. So I'd say that's probably the biggest thing, is just take an inventory on what you're spending, compare it to what your income is, and make changes. You have to make changes, right? Change is hard for a lot of people, but it's the only way to affect any sort of improvement.
Well, how did you learn financial literacy coming from parents who were not financially literate?
I don't know if it was any one thing other than just I got myself into credit card trouble. So I learned the hard way. I bought a car when I was graduating from college that was like $19,000, and I could not afford it. The monthly payment was $556 plus insurance.
Oh my gosh.
My bi-monthly pay from the Marine Corps as a second lieutenant was like, after taxes, my bi-monthly pay was like $500 or something like that.
Oh no.
So he took one full paycheck and part of my second paycheck just to cover my car. And that was painful. That was really painful. And then I was sent to Okinawa for a year, and that really helped me kind of get back on my feet financially. Just because you get additional stipends when you live there. But when I came back, I was determined not to be in that situation again. And so I just lived frugally. Back then in the early 90s, as a single man, I could live on like $70 a week.
Nice. That's awesome.
I put $15 gas in my Honda Civic, and I'd go to I go to the commissary on base and I buy $50 worth of food. I could live on less than $100 a week, and then have a little money to have fun on the weekends. And then every spare dollar I had, I started buying mutual funds.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. What is a mutual fund?
It's just a collection of stocks that are combined into what's called a mutual fund, and it diversifies the risk, so you don't have your money tied up in any one particular stock.
Circling back to Wolfgang, what does it look like when you get into a franchise? What does that process look like? What do they require of you? Can you share that?
Well, they run a credit check on you they want to see that you're financially solvent. You have to share some of your personal financials with them. Then they issue something called a franchise disclosure document, which is like 100 and some pages, and just describes all the terms and conditions of running a Wolfgang franchise. And they're pretty hard and fast legal rules about the process. Like from what I remember, they issue you the FDD, and then you can't sign it or move on to the next step in the process for like 7 days or something like that. It's a federal law around franchising. And part of the due diligence that I would recommend anybody getting into a business, whether it's a franchise or something else, is talking to current owners who are running that business. And if you can, find owners because the corporate, the people that are trying to sell you on buying the franchise, they're going to set you up with the happiest owners there are.
Right.
So if you can find a few on your own and maybe get a more unfiltered view, I would strongly recommend that. But then it's, the financing of it is your responsibility.
Okay. Do you have to come up with 100% self-funded to be able to purchase it, and then they just give you the name, or how does that work?
Yeah, so you have to buy, if there's a franchise fee.
Okay.
It starts, it's typically 45 to 50,000.
Okay.
And then all of the capital required to build out the store.
So you buy into the franchise for 45 grand. Did you have to buy the building?
No.
Okay.
Leased it.
You leased the building. Do you have to purchase all of the stock and everything, the lights, the paint, the flooring, everything in between?
Yep.
Roughly how much does it cost to build something out like this?
About 300,000.
300 grand. Okay, so you're in the hole 345 grand right off the rip, plus lease, however much that costs. With a lease, is it like a residential lease where you've got a first and a last, or do you have to put a chunk up front, or how does that work?
No, commercial leases are typically 10 years in duration.
Okay.
So you sign a 10-year lease. And there's a schedule there for how the rent is going to increase each year.
Okay.
It's not trivial, like you're committing to 10 years.
What made you select this location?
The guy that first introduced me to Wolfgang, he told me that this was an up-and-coming area. And he lived in Raleigh. He spent a lot of time researching it. And so I went on blind faith. And it's worked out well.
You've been in this location for how long?
2 years and 2 months.
2 years and 2 months. And now you also own another location in Wilmington. How long did you own this one before you ventured into Wilmington?
I owned this one about 9 months before we opened the one in Wilmington.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what made you go, all right, I'm going to go from here to here and grow it? Was there, did business start working well enough here that you wanted to venture out, or were you like,
no,
I want to diversify, or tell me about that?
No, I wasn't making money here.
Yes.
Yeah. You don't make money your first year. You spend a bunch of money to build it and open it up, and then you keep losing money, as you're building your customer base. I just, I have a sense of urgency to build a significant supplemental income for myself. I don't want to be tied to corporate America well into my 60s.
Do you own the 2 locations and any other businesses, or is it just Wolfgang as your primary focus?
Just
now?
Wolfgang.
Yeah. Are you looking to grow into 3 locations?
Yeah, I think we'll probably have a 3rd location sometime next year.
Wow. How has the experience been going from 1 location to 2 locations in such a short period of time?
It for a while I felt like I was spread pretty thin. Because we had lessons learned from running this business for 8 months, but then when we opened that one in Wilmington, and my other son was managing that, he didn't have the benefit of that experience. Like, he came here a few times and would train, but there's nothing like living it. And so we were still, we had some personnel issues here, off and on all of last year. And so, dealing with that, trying to, give my son in Wilmington the support that he needed, as he was learning and figuring it out. There was definitely a period where I felt spread pretty thin, and I wasn't doing anything really well. I was just doing everything kind of half-assed. But we're in a much better place now.
So you mentioned personnel issues. What advice would you give to somebody trying to get a job?
Someone trying to get a job.
Somebody trying to get a job or trying to hire employees.
It's the hardest part of the business. Every business owner will tell you that. Rather than give you some sort of like practical job aid for it, I will tell you that I think it was Maya Angelou who said, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time, or something like that. That would be a good rule of thumb. When someone shows you who they are and it's not someone that you want to be working with, recognize it, hire slow and fire fast.
There you go.
I have never regretted letting someone go too early. I have frequently regretted waiting too long to part ways with someone.
How do you figure out where to buy all the stuff that goes in the shop, and do they help you with that, or is it something you research on your own? How does that work?
No, they have an operations team that helps with setting up the initial vendors. Once the store is open, though, it's kind of up to you. I mean, you have to do the inventory management. Nobody's going to do it for you. And you learn through trial and error, which vendors are more beneficial than others. So you have the latitude, to establish new vendor relationships. If you find a product that you think would be popular, they do help you with the initial setup.
What goes into finding a new vendor? Are you just Googling people, or how do you do that?
No, it's a lot. We've about 5 fellow Wolfgang owners in this area. We've kind of established our own informal network. And so we share information quite a bit. If someone finds a good vendor that they like, they like their product or their service or what have you, they'll share it with the group. And, that's typically how we do it. There are a couple of trade shows. There's one called Global Pet Expo.
Okay.
Which is every February, I think, February or March. And it's just this massive convention center full of vendors in the pet industry. So you can learn a lot there about different products and meet different vendors. But it's really kind of a combination of the two. Just staying connected to people that are doing what you do and learning from them as much as possible.
Sounds like networking has been a huge part of
Oh,
to
yeah.
be successful.
Oh, absolutely.
What advice would you give to me, who's just starting out on this journey of trying to make $1 million and trying to build a business and get that business to then purchase other businesses and do a lot of entrepreneurship that you have done?
It's getting up and grinding.
Yeah.
There's no substitute for that, you know? I mean, one of the funniest things I heard a millionaire tell me was, yeah, after 20 years of getting up and grinding, I'm an overnight success. There's just no substitute for getting up every day, and you know, I'm like any human being. You know, some days I'm more motivated than others.
Mm-hmm.
Some days I've had periods where I didn't even want to come in because I just didn't want to deal with it. And you know, when you have those periods, recognizing that that's just part of the journey, and you will get to the other side of it. But there's just no substitute for just getting up every day, working the fundamentals, and sticking to it. If you think about, and this is what I try to impart on my sons right now, you know, the difference, if you look, let's take the NBA as an example. There are, for every one NBA player, there are probably 100 NBA players out there, or 100 other players out there that are just as talented, but they don't have the mental discipline. Right? They don't have the mental discipline to, okay, I just screwed up that play. It's over. I'm focused on the next play, right? And having that mental discipline, I think, is one of the most important aspects of running a business, right? You're going to make mistakes, right? People are going to call you names. But recognizing, okay, I could have done that better. I could have handled that situation better. Not beating yourself up over it, you know, trying to take some lesson learned from it and then applying it the next time.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that's one of the crucial elements of, like, I'm not prone to, I'm lucky, I'm not prone to anxiety or constant worry. It's just not the way that I'm wired. But I will tell you there were periods, the first 6 months I was running this, where I had this knot in my stomach, like 24/7. And it was anxiety. You know, I was like, God, do I have an ulcer? Like, it was just this pit in my stomach, and you know, it's just a bad place to be, you know. And so recognizing that, feeling confident enough that you're doing the right things, and you know, whether you sink or swim, you're gonna do it by doing the right things. I think is what kind of gets you through the dark periods. But there's just, you know, there is no, you know, I argue with my boys all the time because they started like investing online, right? And so they see, you know, they'll buy some crypto and they see crypto shoot up by 200%. And you're just like, Dad, you know, why you keep your money in all those low risk funds? I'm like, because crypto could drop 300%, right? There is no quick path to riches. And I just think that's an important concept to remember.
Mm-hmm.
There is no quick path.
You went from sitting in a shop, reading a magazine, going, I might lose my job in 5 years, to I gotta figure out how the heck I can become financially free and financially independent, to owning your first rental, then 6, then apartment building, 2 of them, then losing it all in a mix of a divorce, moving to a whole new state, starting not 1, but 2 Wolfgang bakeries. You've accomplished so much. Now what?
I've never heard it quite summarized that way. Yeah, it does seem like a lot when you frame it that way. I don't I don't ever see myself retiring in the traditional sense of the word. And I remember the first job I ever had when I came out of the Marine Corps, the owner of the company was an entrepreneur, and he was a physics professor. And started doing a side business, consulting in the nuclear power industry. Finally, started his own business, and he ended up selling it to a major Fortune 500 company. And he was like 61 or 62 at the time. And he was living in Maryland, and he moved to Fort Lauderdale with his wife. And he was there for 6 months. And he was like, I can't do this. Like, this is going to kill me quickly. Like, the death process is accelerating. And so he moved back to Maryland. And at 63 years of age, he started a new company. And grew it to a multi-million-dollar company. And I just think that's a great example of, like, I don't necessarily want to have to work in a store or an office, every day, but I don't ever really see myself not having some sort of adventure. I think it keeps you intellectually stimulated, keeps you active, and in so doing it helps you ward off the aging process.
Yeah, absolutely. So next step is maybe Wolfgang Bakery number 3.
Yeah.
How many do we want to get to?
I mean, I'd be happy with like 5.
Yeah. That'd be awesome.
Five's a good number. I can live comfortably. Not worry about paying my bills.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think you'll venture into other businesses?
I think it really depends on what my kids want to do.
Yeah.
If they see, hopefully they start doing what I did, and they pay attention to other businesses and opportunities, and if they see something that they think makes sense and I agree, then I'll do it with them.
That's awesome.
That's been one of the, my sons and I have never been closer, and that you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah, no, you can't.
So.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And it has been awesome getting to know you and hearing the ins and outs of who Kirk is and everything that you've done, and starting a business and developing a new business and all the things that you've experienced. And we appreciate you and your vulnerability and the time that you've given and the generosity you've shown today.
I've enjoyed it.
Really awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.